What's up NBA fans, Dom2K on the mic, and let's have a little chat about what we'll be covering in this series. If you're not aware, we have just barely 3 months until the next 2K drops, and regardless of how many people hated 17 and 18's guts, they're still gonna cop 19 and start that cycle all over again because, well, hope. So before we re-enter that cycle of steaming disappointment, I want to drop a series of vids where we go back in time and review all of the past 2Ks that have dropped since the series became popular and then rank them in order from worst to greatest. They really stole the market from live around NBA 2K7, which coincidentally was the first 2K to be released for PS3, and it was also my first in-depth experience with the series, so that's a great place to start. Some of these games were amazing, and some of them were flat out disappointments, so we'll be examining the factors that led to the final result of each game. And if you want something else to be disappointed about, you can grab some tickets to this uncompetitive NBA Final Series with the SeatGeek app. SeatGeek is the amazing app that provides you with the easiest way to buy tickets for almost any kind of event, which would most likely be sports related for you guys. The app pulls tickets from all over the web and has them in one place to make purchasing one for your event really easy, and it also assures you you're going to be getting the best value for your ticket. Each one is ranked with a score from 1 to 100 that lets you know if you're getting a good deal or not for your purchase. On top of that, the app also provides you with the detailed view of what you would see from your seat before you even get there, which is extremely helpful. If you're interested in downloading the app, the links to it will be in both the comment section and highlighted in the description. If you're still on the fence, consider using my promo code DOM2K to get $20 off your first purchase. Each 2K game is going to be evaluated with a few factors to ultimately determine their ranking on my list. We'll be looking at factors such as presentation, which involves things like the intros and the design as you're navigating the menus, how the gameplay and graphics stood up for their time, special features that made the game feel like it had a magic touch to it, such as the Jordan mode in NBA 2K11, and some other things that I'm sure I'll add as I go along. We're starting with 2K7 because as much as I wanted to go out of order to get to the other games first, I think this series works best if we go in a straight line so that we can see the evolution as it happened, see what was taken out or added, how the graphics changed, things like that. NBA 2K7 was officially released on September 25th, 2006 with none other than Shaquille O'Neal donning the cover. This was actually a whole 2 months before the PS3 even came out, so if you were a 360 user, you were already enjoying the, for its time, supreme graphics that carried over from NBA 2K6. Just to give you an idea of the disparity at the time, this is 2K6 on the PS2 and this is 2K6 on the 360. Sports games always tend to have a huge graphical leap from console to console, so if you were an NBA fan at the time, you would have walked barefoot on glass to get to the next gen consoles. Anyways, 2K7 dropped, and to this day, it remains one of my favorite games in the series. It all starts with the presentation, and coming into the new systems, it seemed like they really wanted to make an impression on new customers. Upon entering the game, you're greeted to the Shaq cover screen with a dope soundtrack that I'm not gonna play because I don't want to get copyrighted. And then there's a burst of energy, I guess. I don't really know, but some orange light that streaks through the city until you come to the two towers, which is the team selection screen. I literally never got tired of this sequence as a kid, and 11 years later it still might stand as the most unique team selection presentation in the 2K series, and I can't wait to talk about NBA 2K8 next because this is one of a couple of things that received a huge downgrade for some reason. Upon picking the squad you were going to run with, that same streak of light would fly by through the city, again to crash into the arena doors, which would lead straight into the gameplay. Super creative and entertaining take as far as presentation goes, and it had a nice arcade feel to it that I sensed they didn't want anymore in future generations of 2K. The natural place to go from here is gameplay and graphics. It's extremely difficult to evaluate gameplay of a sports game that's a decade old because of course it feels like they're trash now, and whatever exploits there were probably slipped my mind with the time. Just from the little bit I got to play for this video, it seemed like the spin move was fairly overpowered the same way it was in NBA 2K11. The most I remember off the top of my head about this gameplay was that every single shot was in and out, and I'd imagine that was probably infuriating back in 07. However, what I do remember clearly from playing this with my cousin is that it was arguably the best basketball game on the market at the time in terms of balance between gameplay and graphics. I was stuck with NBA 07 back then because I didn't know any better and only cared about the new graphics on the PS3, but each time I got to play 2K7 when my cousin came down, it felt like I was stepping into a new world of basketball simulation. Sure, NBA 07 was definitely the prettier game, but it felt so lifeless compared to 2K. Here, the animations were smoother, the overall presentation with the commentators and whatnot felt more realistic, and it definitely captivated me more than what I had. However, you've got to admit that the cyber faces looked pretty damn funny. If it wasn't a major character like Shaquille O'Neal or some other superstar, then the faces really didn't look all that great. I can't really describe it, but every player in the game just had this similar look to them, and it really makes you appreciate how far we've come with player likeness. Nonetheless, considering how great the graphics were compared to what gamers were used to, they were more than satisfactory due to the fact that this game really went the extra mile. You may recall in a recent vid me talking about how 2K18 was missing that extra effort that made their games great, but 2K7 doubled down in this category. It all started with their 24/7 mode, which was really my career before my career. And given that this was so long ago, I really feel like somebody's grandpa passing down some stories, because it seems like people who play 2K now didn't even realize that, yeah, this is kind of the OG my career mode right here. There was no be fresh wasting your time with cringe jokes and acting, or useless cutscenes that did nothing to contribute to a good story. Actually, the supporting cast here were pretty tolerable considering my career didn't have a standard yet. Long story short, they get you a spot in this underground league with NBA players after you complete the impossible task of beating Shaquille O'Neal in a free throw contest. You go through this league earning respect as you win games, and with that respect you get to play with and against better and better players. Of course you have a rival just like later 2K stories, but this one was a lot more to the point and way less saturated. Combine all this with the fact that it really was a fresh idea at the time, and it really did seem like 2K was going above and beyond. Next up, we take a look at NBA 2K7 Street Mode, and although it's definitely not the most extensive out of all the 2Ks, in a way, it's more detailed than what we have today. At the moment, we just have Blacktop, the same exact Blacktop we had in NBA 2K17 with absolutely nothing added or changed. You can play anything from 1-on-1 to 5-on-5, and that's literally it. You have one court, and that's all there is to it. In a way, it's almost not fair to compare them because 2K7 came before everything was focused on the online modes, and admittedly, today Blacktop probably has like no players. Nonetheless, it seems like they could have at least done this much. Here you can play all the forms of standard street ball, including a game of 21 with more than 2 players, which I didn't even remember was ever a thing in 2K. Upon messing with the settings, you find that there's 10 different courts you can play on, including famous courts such as Venice Beach and Rucker Park. These variations were obviously provided in mind of the fact that people were likely to play each other offline, and if they did play street ball mode, it'd be a good idea to have so many levels, kind of like any other 2-player game back in the day. But that's not the best part. Most people think that Legends in 2K started when they were announced in 2K11 in conjunction with the Jordan Challenge. Wrong. Legends are actually in NBA 2K7 as parts of all-star teams, and I'm thinking they were even present before that, I just have no way to check right now. Hell, just from the little bit that I saw, they had guys like Kareem that we didn't even have on the PS4 until like 2K16. I did some digging to see if you could trade these legends to regular teams and do associations with them in seasons, but the game wasn't at that point yet. However, you could run blacktop ball with them, and considering the time, this was probably pretty awesome. But now we're on to one of the features in 2K7 that was really ahead of its time, and that would be the crib mode, where you had an apartment before you really even had a use for it. Just take a look at the effort they put into this. First off, the theme of the apartment was based off whatever you said your favorite team was. You could change teams at any time, and the theme of the apartment would switch to feature that team. There were trophy cases where anything you earned in the game through various challenges would be displayed, and this included online challenges. Something useless but cool was the bobblehead display case that featured various superstars and legends, but then they also had a couple of mini games you could play if you were getting bored in your house. You could play darts, which you can see I'm pretty terrible at, and they even had a fully programmed game of air hockey, which I'm also terrible at. Now that NBA 2K18 has the neighborhood where everyone has a full apartment they can walk around and interact with, this doesn't seem so significant. But back before we even had an actual My Player in the NBA, this mode in a basketball game really made you feel like you peaked in life. As much as I understand why the neighborhood is so empty in 2K18, I will admit that I love the apartment feature, and it's something that absolutely needs to be carried over into 2K19. So of course 2K7 also had your run-of-the-mill association, season, and tournament modes, which eventually became the playoffs. There's nothing much to explain here because aside from the minor tweaks that they made to the association over the years, it more or less stayed the same until they ditched it for My League. And the last feature that I'll specifically focus on that I would say actually helps boost 2K7's ranking is Kenny Smith's halftime show. As I stated earlier, 2K really seemed like they wanted to move away from the arcade type feel after this game, but while we had it, it was really something you look forward to after the second quarter. It's nowhere near as detailed or as useful as the realistic halftime shows that followed, but he basically, in a comical way, told you who was balling out and who was trash during the game with his stamps of approval or rejection. Again, nothing too special, but it's definitely something unique that helps sets it apart from other 2K games along with the other features discussed. And what I mean by that is, I can probably show you a halftime show from some other 2Ks and you wouldn't really know the difference or which one it was, but as soon as I show you Kenny's halftime show, if you were playing 2K7 when it was the main game, then you know exactly which 2K it is, and that's what I mean by setting itself apart. So when I get ready to give this game an official rank amongst the others, these scores are gonna help. As far as presentation, it's an easy 10 of 10. NBA 2K7 had one of the most unique layouts as far as navigating through the game, picking your teams. Hell, you even had a phone as your pause menu in the 24/7 mode that made it feel like your player was actually real. I'm always gonna love the cityscape they used in the background, and it's the main reason you can readily identify this game amongst the others. Gameplay and graphics, well, let's just do a quick search here. Back in a land before time, there were 3 basketball games on the market. Here's what NBA Live 07 looked like, here's 2K, and here's NBA 07, the one I owned. I can tell you from experience that NBA 07 was just a pretty game that had really bad gameplay, and from the looks of things, even by 2007 standards, Live looks like absolute trash. The court is pretty, but the way the players moved is making me cringe, and the commentators were as bad then as they are now. So for its time, gameplay and graphics on 2K7 would probably be an 8.5. I go there because it definitely was not the prettiest of the 3, and the faces, the fact that 10 years later the whole cyberface thing being weird, just the fact that still sticks out to me and I can remember it off the top of my head means it was probably never that great, but for the time it was alright. And as far as the features, they're getting another easy 10. Everything from the extensive street ball mode, which was important in 2007's local play culture, to the new 24/7 mode, to the crib that didn't even really need to be there. You could definitely tell 2K was trying to throw a knockout punch at Live, and history tells us that this game helped them succeed. So a score of 9.5 would be pretty difficult for any 2K to beat, but that won't be the final determinant of where any of these games are going to be ranked. Inevitably, there's going to be some intangibles that set certain games above others, so we'll tackle that obstacle when we get there. In the next video, we're going to be looking at NBA 2K8 and doing some comparison to 2K7 to find out where they upgraded and where they downgraded, and ultimately to see which one ranks higher. And that's all I got for you guys today. Make sure to leave a comment below and tell me what your experience with 2K is. Did any of you actually ever play 2K7? Because I know a lot of my fans are probably younger, and this was about 10 or 11 years ago, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of you hadn't entered 2K until like 11, 12, 13, around that time. I definitely wouldn't be surprised, especially since 2K7 was not the only basketball game on the market, so maybe some of you never played it at all. You can leave your comments for your favorite 2Ks and where you would rank 2K7, because we're gonna go through all of them from 7 to maybe 18, I don't know, because I'm going to finish this series rather quickly. I'm not sure if I'm going to do 18 since it's still out, and right now, since it's the most recent one, everyone hates it. I don't know, we'll tackle that when we get there. Either way, hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed. Hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.